Gyrator circuit, gyro compass, gyro frequency, gyromagnetic medium, gyromagnetic resonance, gyroscope, gyroservo, gyrostabilization, abatement cost, ability and earnings, ability to pay, ability to pay theory, abnormal profits, abscissa, absenteeism, absentee landlord, absolute advantage, absolute cost advantage, absolute income hypothesis, absolute monopoly, absolute prices, absolute scarcity, absolute value, absorption approach, abstinence, accelerating inflation, accelerated depreciation, accelerator, accelerator coefficient, accelerator effect, accelerator principle, acceptance, accepting house, accession rate, Achesian's tax, access, accommodating monetary policy, accommodation transactions, account, accrued expenses, achieving society, across-the-board tariff changes, action lag, active balance, activity analysis, activity rate, adaptive expectation, adding up problem, additional worker hypothesis, addition rule, additive utility function, address principle, adjustment cost, adjustable peg regime, adjustable peg system, adjustment lag, adjustment process, adverse selection, administered prices, administrative lag, ad valorem tax, Advance Corporation Tax Act, advance refunding, advance, advanced countries, adverse balance, advertising, advertising sale ratio, AFL-CIO, age earning profile, Agency for International Development, agency shop, agglomeration economies, aggregate concentration, adverse supply shock, aggregate demand, aggregate demand curve, aggregate demand schedule, aggregate expenditure, aggregate income, aggregate output, aggregate production function, aggregate supply curve, aggregation problem, agrarian revolution, agricultural earnings, agricultural exports, agricultural lag, agricultural levies, agricultural reform, agricultural sector, Agricultural Stabilization and Conservation Service, agricultural subsidies, amalgamation, aid, agricultural wage boards, Aitken estimator, alienation. Alice Maurice 1911. Allen. Sir Roy George Douglas 1906–1983. Allowances and expenses for corporation tax. Allocate. Allocation function. Allocative efficiency. Allowances and expenses for income tax. Almond lag. Alpha coefficient. America selling price. Alternative technology. Altruism. America depository receipt. America Federation of Labor. American Stock Exchange. Amortization. Amplitude. Amterg. Analysis of variance. Anarchy. Allowance. On-sea round. Anchor argument. Animal spirits. Analysis stats. Annual allowances. Annual capital charge. Annuity. Annuity market. Anomalous pay. Anticipated inflation. Antitrust. Appreciation. Anti-export bias. Appropriate products. Apprenticeship. Appropriate technology. Appropriation account. Approval voting. A priori. Arbitrage. Arbitration. Arc elasticity of demand. Arch. Asia Development Bank. Arch effect. Aristotle. Arithmetic mean. Arithmetic progression. Aerokenethoi. A shares. Assessable income or profit. Assessable profit. Asset. Asset stripping. Assignment problem. Assisted areas. Association of Southeast Asian Nations ASEAN. Association of International Bond Dealers. Assurance. Asset stocks and services flows. Asymmetric information. Asymptote. Asymptotic distribution. Atomistic competition. Attribute. Auctioneer. Augmented Dickey-Fuller test. Auction markets. Augmented Phillips curve. Austrian school. Autarky. Autarky economy. Autocorrelation. Automatic stabilizers. Automation. Autonomous expenditure. Induced expenditure. Autonomous consumption. Autonomous investment. Autonomous investment demand. Autonomous transactions. Autonomous variables. Autoregression. Availability effects. Average. Average cost. Average cost pricing. Average expected income. Average fixed costs. Average rate of tax. Average product. Average productivity. Average propensity to consume. Average propensity to save. Average revenue. Aquinas St. Thomas. Average revenue product. Average variable cost. Average-Johnson effect. Axiom of completeness. Axiom of continuity. Axiom of convexity. Average total cost. Axiom of dominance. Axiom of. Axiom of preference. Backdoor fencing. Backhaul rates. Backstop technology. Budget. Backward bending supply curve of labor. Backward integration. Backward linkage. Backwash effects. Bad. Bad money drive out good. Walter. Balanced budget. Balance sheet. Bancor. Bank Charter Act. Banking panic. Balanced budget multiplier. Balanced economic development. Balanced growth. Balance of payment. Balance of trade. Balance principle. Balanced GDP. Bandwagon effect. Bank. Bank advance. Bank bill. Bank credit. Bank deposit. Bank for international settlements. Banking school. Bank loan. Bank note. Bank of England. Bank of United States. Bank rate. Bankruptcy. Bargaining tariff. Basic industries. Bargaining theory of wages. Bargaining unit. Bank's cash deposit ratio. Barlow report. Barometric price leadership. Barriers to entry. Barter. Barter agreements. Barter economy. Base period. Base rate. Basic activities. Basic exports. Basic wage rates. Basic need philosophy. Basing point system. Bayesian techniques. Bearer bonds. Bears. Beggar my neighbor policies. Behavioral equation. Behavioral expectations. Behavioral theories of the firm. Base year. Benefit-cost ratio. Benefit-cost analysis. Benefit principle. Benelux Economic Union. Bentham Jeremy. Bergsonian social welfare function. Bernoulli hypothesis. Bertrand's duopoly model. Best linear unbiased estimator. Beta. Bid. Beverage report. Bias. Bid rent function. Bifurcation hypothesis. Big bang. Big push. Bilateral assistance. Bilateral monopoly. Bilateral trade. Bill. Bill of exchange. Bill broker. Bills only. Binary variable. Biological interest rate. Birth rate. BIS. Bivariate analysis. Black market. Bliss point. Block grant. Blue chip. Blue book. Blue collar workers. Plus residuals. Bombardk. Eugen von 1851 1914. Bond. Bond market. Bonus issue. Book value. Boom. Bowerism. Board account. Bounded rationality. Box Jenkins. Brain drain. Branch banking. Brand loyalty. Break-even analysis. Broker. Break-even level of income. Bretton Woods. Brokerage. Bretton Woods system. Brookings model. Brussels. Treaty of Brussels. Treaty of Brussels Conference. Brussels tariff nomenclature. Buchanan. James M. Budget. Budget line. Budget deficit. Budget surplus. Budgetary control. Budget shares. Buffer stocks. Building society. Built-in stabilizers. Bullion. Bulls. Bureaucracy. Capital coefficients. Economic theory of capital consumption allowance. Capital controversy. Capital deepening. Capital equipment. Capital expenditure. Bureaus. Business cycle. Business performance. Business risk. Buyer concert ration. Buyer's market. Calculus. Call money. Call option. Cambridge equation. Cambridge School of Economics. Cambridge theory of money. Cap. Capacity utilization. Capital. Capital account. Capital accumulation. Capital allowances. Capital asset. Capital asset pricing model. Capital budgeting. Capital charges. Capital information. Capital formation. Capital gain. Capital gains tax. Capital gearing. Capital goods. Capital intensity. Capital intensive. Capital intensive economy. Capital intensive sector. Capital intensive techniques. Capital. Marginal efficiency of. Capitalization. Capitalization issue. Capitalization rates. Capitalized value. Capital labor ratio. Capital loss. Capitalism. Capital movements. Capital market. Capital output ratio. Capital rationing. Capital requirements. Capital reversing. Capital services. Capital stock. Capital stock adjustment principle. Capital structure. Capital tax. Capital theoretic approach. Capital theory. Capital transfer tax. Capital turnover criterion. Capital widening. Capitation tax. Capture theory. Ceiling. Captive buyer. Carbon tax. CBI. Cardinalism. Cardinal utility. Cartel. Cartel sanctions. Cash. Cash balance approach. Cash crops. Cash drainage. Cash flow. Causality. Cash flow statement. Cash limit. Cash ratio. Casual employment. Categorical. Seller Key Favor Act. Central Bank. Central Bank of Central Banks. Central Business District. Central Limit Theorem. Central Planing. Central Place Theory. Central Policy Review Staff. Central Statistical Office. Certainty equivalence. Ceilings and floors. Certificate of deposit. CES production function. Ceteris paribus. Chain rule. Central tendency. Causation. Chamberlain. Edward. Check. Characteristics theory. Charge account. Chicago School. Cheap money. Check off. Check card. Chi-square distribution. Child allowance. Choice of technology. Choice variable. CIF. CIO. Circular flow of income. Choice of production technique. Circular flow of payments. Clark. Circulating capital. John Bates. Classical dichotomy. Classical economics. Classical school. Classical system of company taxation. Classical and Keynesian unemployment. Classical model. Clay. Clayton Act. Clean float. Clearing banks. Clearing house. Cleometrics. Closed economy. Closed shop. Closing prices. Clubs. Club good. Theory of. Ronald H. Coase's theorem. Cobb-Douglas production function. Cobweb theorem. Cochrane-Orcutt. CO determination. Coefficient of determination. Coefficient of variation. Coercive comparisons. Cofactor. Coinage. Coincident indicator. Cointegration. Cola. Collateral security. Collective bargaining. Collective coys. Collective goods. Collective exhaustive. Collinearity. Multicollinearity. Collusion. Collusive oligopoly. Collusive price leadership. Comic-Con. Command economy. Commercial banks. Commercial bill. Commercial paper. Commercial policy. Commissions. Commodity. Commodity bundling. Commodity Credit Corporation. Commodity money. Commodity space. Company bargaining. Commodity terms of trade. Common agricultural policy. Common customs tariff. Common external tariff. Common facility cooperative. Common market. Company director. Common stock. Communism. Community charge. Community indifference curve. Company. Company saving. Comparable worth. Comparability argument. Comparative advantage. Comparative costs. Classical techniques. Frequency division multiplexing. Frequency modulated cyclotron. Frequency monitor. Frequency multiplier. Frequency multiplier klystron. Frequency pulling. Frequency pushing. Frequency regulator. Frequency response characteristic. Frequency response curve. Frequency response equalization. Frequency sampling system. Frequency scanner. Frequency selectivity. Frequency sensitive load. Frequency separator. Frequency shift. Frequency shift keying FSK. Frequency spectrum. Frequency stability. Frequency swing. Frequency synthesizer. Frequency to number converter. Frequency translation. Frequency tripler. Fresnel. Fresnel diffraction. Frictional electricity. Fringe antenna. Fringe area. Fringe effect. Fringe radiation. Front end. Front end computer. Front end interface. Front end processing. Front end processor FEP. Front end system. Front panel. Frozen state. Fully transistorized. Full adder. Full duplex. Full load. Full operation. Full parabolic reflector. Full read pulse. Full satellite exchange. Full scale deflection. Full text searching. Full wave dipole. Full wave doubler. Full wave rectifier. Function. Functional. Functional block. Functional description. Functional design. Functional diagram. Functional element. Functional logic. Functional programming. Functional simulator. Functional specification. Function abstraction. Function box. Function button. Function character. Function code. Function generation. Function generator. Function key. Function letter. Function management protocol FMP. Function table. Fundamental. Fundamental frequency. Fundamental mode. Fundamental tone. Fundamental wave. Fundamental wavelength. Fuse. Fuse holder. Fuse panel. Fuse switch. Fuse wire. Fusible link. Fusible link memory. Fusible wire. Fusion process. Fusion zone. Fuzzy. Fuzzy logic. Fuzzy set. G3 gadolinium gallium garnet. G3 group 3 facsimile standard. G4 group 4 facsimile standard. GaAs gallium arsenide diode. GaAs gallium arsenide laser. Gadget. Gauge. Gauge. Gain region. Gain. Gain control. Gain hit. Gain bandwidth product. Galactic noise. Galactic radio noise. Galena detector. Gallium arsenide GaAs. Gallium arsenide diode. Gallium arsenide semiconductor. Galvanic. Galvanic battery. Galvanic cell. Galvanic current. Galvanize. Galvanoluminescence. Galvanomagnetism. Galvanometer. Galvanometer constant. Galvanometer shunt. Game theory. Gamma. Gamma ray. GAN global area network. Gamut. Gantt chart. Gap. Gap length. Gap reluctance. Garbage collection. Gas-filled thyratron. Gas laser hologram. Gas phototube. Gas-filled capacitor. Garbage in. Garbage out GIGO. Gas laser. Gas-filled relay. Gas plasma display. Gate to source impedance. Gate-triggered thyristor. Gated bidirectional switch. Gated decoder. Gaseous plasma. Gate signal. Gate. Gate array. Gate circuit. Gate closing pulse. Gate electrode. Gate junction. Gate resistance. Gate strip. Gate channel junction. Gate to drain impedance. Gateway. Gateway server. Gating circuit. Gauge. Gauze. Gauze pulse. Gaussian curve. Gaussian distribution. Gaussian envelope. Gaussian function. Gauge. Gaussian unit. Gaussian noise. Gauss meter. GB code. QABIO code. GB. Geiger-Müller counter. Giesler tube. General purpose computer. General purpose register. General purpose system simulator GPSS. Gigabyte. Gear. Geek computer. Generalized information system GIS. Generalized model. Generalized sequential access method. Generalized tamed frequency modulation GTFM. Generalized trace facility GTF. Generate. Generated address. Generated code. Generation. Generation data group GDG. Generation rate. Generator. Generic term. Genetic algorithm. Generic. Generic key. Generic procedure. Geodetic dome. Geodetic line. Geometric. Geodetic survey. Geodetic. Geodesic. Geodetics. Geodesy. Geographic Information System GIS. Geometric distortion. Geometric mean. Geometric model. Geometric progression. Geometric resonance. Geometric solution. Geometrical optics. Geometry. Geophysics. Geostationary. Geostationary orbit. Geostationary satellite. Germanium. Germanium diode. Germanium photocell. Germanium photodevice. Germanium rectifier. Germanium transistor. Ghost image. Ghost signal. GI space. Gibberish. Giga. Germanium film. Gigabit GB. Gigabyte GB. Gigaflops. Gigahertz GHz. Gilbert. Gimmick. Gizmo. Gizmo. glare. Glass dielectric capacitor, glass insulator, glass substrate, glide path receiver, glide path transmitter, glitch, global, global area network GAN, global bus, global character, global communication system, global descriptor table GDT, global information system GIS, global positioning system GPS, global processor, global system, global telecommunication, global variable, glossary, GMT Greenwich Mean Time, goal-driven method, Golay code, gold-bonded diode, graphic file, graphic generator, graphic instrument, graphic layout, graphic mode, graphic panel, graphic synthesizer, graphic terminal, graphical icon, graphical interface, graphical kernel system GKS, graphical object, graphical operating system, graphical user interface GUI equals graphical interface, graphics, graphics adapter, granular noise, graph, graph command, graph model, graph plotter, graph structure, graph theory, graph worksheet, graphic access method GAM, graphic analysis, graphic bit image, graphic card, graphic character, graphic data, graphic display, graphic equalizer, graphics coordinate system, gopher, graceful exit, gradation of image, gradation of light, gradient, Gram-Schmidt procedure, graphics display controller, graphics editor, graphics processor, graphics raster, graphics software, graphics tablet, graphics system, graphite, grid potentiometer, grid pulsing, Grassot flux meter, grading interferometer, Gratz connection, Gratz rectifier, grayscale, grid rectification, green phosphor display, Greenwich Mean Time GMT, grid, grid bias detector, grid resistance, grid bias voltage, grid blocking, grid capacitance, grid capacitor, grid return, grid circuit, grid conductance, grid current, grid excitation, grid leak detector, grid modulation, grid neutralization, grid pitch, grid plate transconductance, Grid point. Ground return circuit. Ground terminal. Ground return coupling. Ground rod. Ground wire. Ground zero. Grid suppressor. Grid voltage. Grid winding. Grid anode characteristic. Grid anode conductance. Grid cathode capacitance. Grid filament capacitance. Ground plane antenna. Grid plate capacitance. Ground GND. Ground bus. Ground cable. Ground potential. Ground circuit. Ground line. Grounded emitter configuration. Ground reflected wave. Ground to air communication. Grounded. Grounded circuit. Grounded emitter. Grounded base configuration. Grounded emitter amplifier. Group attribute. Group delay. Group distribution frame. Group frequency. Group icon. Group item. Growth rate. Group separator GS. Groupware software for work groups. Growing process. Grown junction. Grown diffusion. GS group separator. GT cut crystal. Guard bit. Guard band. Guard circuit. Guard tone. Guard ring capacitor. Gutton pole effect. Guarded command. Guest computer. Guide wavelength. Guided wave radio. Guiding cable. EMAT effect. Guillotine attenuator. Gun effect oscillation. Gun effect diode. Gun frequency. Guru. Gyrator. G-band. Auctions. COS.